They say inflation is under control at 3%. They say Trump's tax cuts put more money in your pocket. But here's what I found when I calculated the real cost of the madman strategy for Americans and why economists are quietly warning about 2026. April 2nd, 2025, a date that will be studied in economics textbooks for the next century. My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. In the 48 hours that followed, $5 trillion in stock market value evaporated. The S&P 500 crashed 10%. It was the worst two-day plunge since the COVID pandemic. And unlike a virus, this one was entirely self-inflicted. But here's the thing. Right now, in January 2026, the stock market has recovered. Unemployment is still at 4%. Gas is under $3 a gallon. And Trump is calling it the greatest economic success story in American history. I've spent 10 years analyzing economic crises, from the 2015 commodity crash to the COVID supply chain collapse. And I'm going to tell you today, with real numbers and hard data, what the consequences of this experiment will be. Because what we're witnessing isn't an economic policy, it's a sugar high. A rush of debt-fueled stimulus and deregulation that feels incredible right now, but could lead us straight into either a sustained economic renaissance or Great Depression 2.0. Before we dive into the data, let me explain the central thesis of this video. I call it the sugar coma economy. When you eat pure sugar, you get a rush, energy, euphoria. Your blood glucose spikes. You feel unstoppable. But if you don't balance it with real nutrition, protein, fiber, sustainable fuel, you crash. Hard. That's exactly what's happening to the American economy right now. The sugar, tax cuts, deregulation, deficit spending, easy money pressure on the Fed. The rush, stock market highs, low unemployment, cheap gas, bigger tax refunds. The crash that's coming? Inflation, trade war escalation, a fiscal hole so deep it would take a generation to climb out. Now, I'm not here to tell you Trump's economy is all bad. That would be intellectually dishonest. There are real benefits happening right now. But I am here to tell you that every one of those benefits comes with a price tag that's being deferred, not eliminated. And eventually, someone has to pay the bill. Let's start with the promise Trump made on the campaign trail. Inflation will vanish completely. Here's the reality. When Trump took office in January 2025, inflation was at 3%, down from the 9.1% peak in 2022, but still above the Federal Reserve's 2% target. By December 2025, it's hovering around 2.7 to 3%. That sounds like success, right? Not so fast. According to the Peterson Institute for International Economics, one of the most respected nonpartisan economic research organizations in the world, if Trump's full agenda is implemented, inflation could surge to 6 to 9% by late 2026. Let me repeat that, up to 9% inflation. We're talking about a potential return to 2022 levels. Where's this coming from? Driver number one, the tariff tax. Tariffs are taxes, full stop. And despite what the administration claims, Americans pay them, not China, not Europe, not Mexico. When Trump announced his, quote, Liberation Day tariffs, he imposed a 10% baseline tax on virtually all imports. For China, rates climbed as high as 145% on certain goods. The average U.S. tariff rate hit 17.7%, the highest since 1934. The Tax Foundation calculates this amounts to a $1,200 tax increase per American household in 2025, rising to $2,600 when fully implemented. That's not a theory, that's math. Driver number 2, the labor shortage. Trump's mass deportation campaign has removed hundreds of thousands of workers from industries that desperately need them: agriculture, construction, food processing. When you remove workers, labor costs rise. When labor costs rise, production costs rise. When production costs rise, consumer prices rise. Economists call this a supply shock. I call it shooting yourself in the foot to prove you have a gun. Driver number 3, Fed interference. Trump has spent the past year publicly attacking Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, demanding rate cuts despite inflation remaining above target. He's threatened to fire Fed officials. He's even floated the idea of installing a, quote, more pliant chair. Here's what markets understand that politicians don't. The moment a central bank loses its independence, its credibility collapses. And when credibility collapses, inflation expectations become unanchored. Every emerging market currency crisis in history started the same way, with a leader who thought he could bully the central bank into printing prosperity. On July 4th, 2025, because symbolism matters more than substance in this administration, Trump signed the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, OBBBA. I'm not making that name up. Let's break down what's in it. The sweet parts. First, it made the 2017 tax cuts permanent. No more expiration, lower rates forever. Second, it introduced new deductions. No federal tax on tips, up to $25,000 a year. No tax on overtime pay, up to $12,500. And no tax on Social Security benefits for most retirees. Third, it created Trump accounts, tax-advantaged savings accounts for children with $5,000 annual contribution limits. On paper, this sounds great. More money in workers' pockets, more savings for kids. What's not to love? The bitter reality. None of this is paid for. The spending cuts from Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency, yes, Doge, like the meme coin, amounted to roughly $160 billion. That's a one-time savings. The tax cuts, they cost trillions every single year. Here's what the nonpartisan analysts say. The Tax Foundation, a center-right think tank, projects Trump's agenda will add $3 trillion to the national debt over 10 years. The Penn Wharton budget model, which leans neither left nor right, projects $7 trillion. $7 trillion. To put that in perspective, that's roughly the entire GDP of Germany and France combined, added to our national credit card. And here's the cynical truth that both parties refuse to admit. Deficits at this scale will eventually force either massive spending cuts to programs like Social Security and Medicare, or massive tax increases on future generations. The bill always comes due. The only question is, who pays it? Now, here's where things get interesting, and where I need you to think like a geopolitical strategist, not a partisan. There's a concept in international relations called the Madman Theory. It was pioneered by Richard Nixon and his advisor Henry Kissinger during the Vietnam War. The idea is simple. If your enemies believe you're crazy enough to do anything, including irrational self-destruction, they'll capitulate rather than risk provoking you. Nixon tried to convince the Soviets he might use nuclear weapons. He flew B-52 bombers loaded with nukes toward Soviet airspace for 18 hours straight, just to send a message. Trump has adapted this theory to economics. Consider what happened after the tariff announcements. South Korea's Samsung, facing potential 25% tariffs, announced a $37 billion investment in U.S. semiconductor manufacturing in Texas. Hyundai pledged $26 billion, including a new auto factory in Georgia and a steel plant in Louisiana. Toyota, despite absorbing $9.5 billion in tariff costs, announced plans to expand U.S. production and invest $21 billion in American facilities. Did Trump's tariffs work? In a narrow sense, yes. He used the threat of economic chaos to force companies to build factories in America rather than risk exposure to unpredictable trade policy. But here's the problem with the Madman Theory. It only works until the bluff is called. Nixon's gambit failed because the Soviets didn't believe he was actually insane. They called his bluff. The war dragged on. Trump faces the same risk. When he announced Liberation Day, the stock market crashed. He panicked and announced a 90-day pause within a week. Then he reinstated tariffs. Then he negotiated temporary truces with China. Every reversal signals that Trump will back down if the pressure gets high enough. And once your opponents know you'll blink, the leverage evaporates. A Harvard negotiation study put it bluntly. Whatever he promises, whatever he threatens, you're just not going to believe it. And that makes it so much harder to leverage the power you have. The Madman Theory is a one-shot weapon. Trump has already fired it multiple times, and each time he's revealed the gun might be loaded with blanks. Let's talk about what's actually happened since Liberation Day. The stock market crashed 10% in 2 days. The S&P 500's worst performance since COVID. The NASDAQ entered bear market territory. Trillions evaporated. Then markets recovered. By late June 2025, the S&P 500 hit new all-time highs. So, was it all a nothing burger? No. Here's what the recovery obscures. China retaliated with 84 to 125% tariffs on American goods. U.S. agricultural exports to China collapsed. Soybean farmers, already struggling, watched their primary market evaporate overnight. Global supply chains, built over decades, don't just reroute in months. Companies are caught between absorbing tariff costs, passing them to consumers, or relocating manufacturing at enormous expense. The Peterson Institute forecasts that by 2026, Trump's trade policies will leave U.S. GDP 5% lower than it would otherwise be. 5% of GDP. That's over $1.3 trillion in lost economic output. And here's what tariff supporters don't want to acknowledge. The revenue doesn't match the projections. The Treasury Department projected tariffs would raise, quote, well over $500 billion, maybe $1 trillion. Reality? About $288 billion in 2025, according to the Bipartisan Policy Center, far below expectations. Because tariffs also reduce trade volume. When things get more expensive, people buy less. It's almost like there's no such thing as a free lunch. Unemployment remains at roughly 4%, historically low. Trump points to this as proof his economy is working. But look beneath the headline number. Job creation has collapsed. In 2025, the economy added an average of 55,000 jobs per month. Compare that to 180,000 per month during 2017-2019. Federal employment has been slashed by 270,000 workers, part of Musk's DOGE initiative. Real wages are up about 4% for the year, roughly $700 in extra purchasing power. But here's the catch. That growth is driven by labor shortages from immigration restrictions, which means the same dynamic is also driving inflation. You can't have it both ways. Either wages rise because workers are scarce, which means prices rise too, or wages stagnate because workers are plentiful. There's no magic button that makes workers both scarce and cheap. Moody's Analytics forecasts that by 2027, the economy will have 2.6 million fewer jobs than it would under the status quo scenario. 2.6 million jobs. That's not a rounding error. That's a crisis. Now let's zoom out to the global chessboard, because economics doesn't happen in a vacuum. Ukraine and Russia. Trump has frozen or slowed military aid to Kyiv, pushing for a negotiated settlement that would effectively reward Russian aggression with territorial gains. European allies are scrambling to fill the gap, but without American firepower, Ukraine's position weakens daily. NATO, trust is shattered. European nations are preparing for strategic autonomy, diplomatic code for we can't rely on America anymore. Germany and France are accelerating independent defense capabilities. Middle East. Trump authorized airstrikes on Iranian nuclear facilities. The two-state solution for Israel-Palestine officially abandoned. China. Harsh tariffs combined with personal summits with Xi Jinping. It's confrontation and negotiation simultaneously, which creates maximum uncertainty for everyone involved. Here's what matters for economics. Unstable geopolitics means unstable markets. Every time Trump tweets about tariffs or Iran or NATO, markets gyrate. Business investment freezes because CEOs can't plan when policy changes hourly. The Peterson Institute found that tariff uncertainty alone has reduced business investment measurably. Companies are hoarding cash rather than building factories because they don't know what the rules will be next month. So what does all this mean for you? The good news. Gas is under $3 per gallon. Real relief for commuters and truckers. Tax refunds are up, averaging about $1,000 more for many households. Mortgage rates have eased to 6.2%, still high historically, but down from the 7% plus peaks. Stock portfolios have recovered, and then some, for those with retirement accounts. The bad news. Imported goods cost more. Appliances, electronics, clothing, furniture. Food prices are volatile as agricultural supply chains adjust. Social programs have been cut. SNAP benefits were temporarily suspended. Medicaid eligibility tightened. Health insurance costs are rising as ACA subsidies erode. And uncertainty is everywhere. Nobody knows what the rules will be next quarter, next month, next week. So, sugar high or sustainable growth? Let me leave you with this. The Trump economy in January 2026 looks strong on the surface. Markets are up, unemployment is low, gas is cheap. But underneath, we're running on borrowed time and borrowed money. The national debt is exploding. Trade wars have destroyed relationships that took decades to build. Inflation pressures are building behind a dam of one-time corporate absorption and pre-tariff inventory depletion. By mid-2026, that dam may break. Retailers will have exhausted their stockpiles, companies will have run out of margins to absorb, consumers will face the full weight of tariffs that were always going to be passed through eventually. The sugar high is real. The crash may be too. I'm not here to tell you which outcome is certain. Nobody can predict that with confidence. But I am here to tell you that this is the most dangerous economic experiment in American history. A wholesale rejection of the post-World War II consensus on trade, alliances, and fiscal responsibility. Whether it's genius or madness depends entirely on whether the world blinks first. And historically, the world has a pretty good poker face.
I've studied every major trade war of the last century, and they all share one pattern. The country that starts it always believes they'll win quickly. They never do. Let me make this personal for a moment. I talked to a lot of people in their 60s and 70s, people who spent 40 years building a retirement, who did everything right, saved, invested, paid off the house, planned for Social Security, and now they're watching the news, wondering if the rules are about to change. Here's what I tell them. You're not crazy to be worried, but you're also not helpless. The market's recovered after Liberation Day. Your 401k probably looks fine right now, maybe even better than fine. But that recovery was built on two things. Hope that tariffs would be negotiated down and companies absorbing costs they can't absorb forever. By mid-2026, those buffers run out. Retailers will have sold through their pre-tariff inventory. Manufacturers will have exhausted their margins. And the price increases that haven't hit yet, they're coming. Not because anyone wants them to, but because math doesn't care about politics.
The question isn't whether there will be consequences. There will be. The question is whether those consequences will be manageable. A slowdown, some inflation, some adjustment, or whether they'll compound into something worse. And that depends on decisions being made right now in Washington, in Beijing, in Brussels, in boardrooms you'll never see. What can you do? First, don't panic. Panic is never a strategy, but don't ignore the signals either. Second, diversify. If your entire retirement is in U.S. equities, you're betting everything on one outcome. That's not investing, that's gambling. Third, stay informed. Not from cable news shouting matches, but from actual data. The sources I've cited in this video, Peterson Institute, Penn, Wharton, Moody's Analytics, they publish free reports. Read them. Because the bill is coming. The only question is whether we pay it ourselves or leave it for our grandchildren. If you found this analysis valuable, subscribe for more deep dives into the forces shaping our world. Drop a comment with your take. Is this sustainable growth or a sugar high? And don't forget to suggest the next topic for discussion. See you in the next one.